Hey, welcome to a new day on the course. Today we're going to continue working on our webcam detector program, and the main things you'll learn today is how to save video frames as images. You will also learn how to send emails with attachments, so you will attach an image to the email that you'll send to yourself or other people. And then you'll also learn threading in Python, which is a new concept, and it's very important to know how it works and how you make it work in Python. So let's get ready and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Previously, we were able to call the send email function when the object exits the view. In this video, we want to capture some images. So what images should we capture? Well, we should capture multiple images from the time when the object enters the view until the time the object exits the view. And then out of these multiple images, we will choose the best image and send that image via email. So for this video, we want to focus on capturing frames when the object enters the frame. Let's do that. To store images, you can do cv2.im, right? And this will get as arguments two values. The first one should be the name of the image, for example, image.png, and the second one should be the frame you want to save as an image. So as you know, videos are made of frames, usually 30 frames per second. So there will be 30 frames every second, and we save each of these frames in an image. Now, we do have an issue here because we have a static string, which means that if the loop runs, the next frame will be overwriting the previous one because the name is the same. So we want to have a dynamic name here. For that, we can use an f string, and instead of saying image here, we can say something like count, and count could be a number which starts from 1. So count starts from 1 outside of the while loop, just here. So in the first iteration, this will be 1.png, but then after that, we update the count. We say count is equal to count plus 1. So the loop, when it goes back here the second time, count should have been updated to 2. So this will be 2.png for the second image, 3.png for the third image, and so on. So let's try and see what this will produce. But please, let's first save these images in a folder such as images / and then 1.png, so the name.png, and create an images folder here. Images, so that should reflect this here. Then run the script. So that's view, some objects may enter or not, quit it with Q, and inside images now you should see multiple images. It's around 100, so that was 3 seconds of video and 30 frames per second. It's about that, yeah, so it makes sense. And somewhere in the middle, in here, we have this image. Now note that we don't see the rectangles here because what we are writing in the image file is the frame, the original frame. We haven't yet added the rectangles at this point. So what we want to do now is we want to cut these two lines, I'm right and the increasing of the count variable, cut those, and we only want to produce images if the status is 1. So status 1 means that an object is in the frame. So we go here under if rectangle any and we say cv2.imWrite and we produce those images. So if I delete this images folder now and create an empty one again, images, so make sure that this is empty and then run the code. So no images are currently being generated because there's no object in the frame. But let me introduce now an object here. There we go, just for 2 seconds. Quit. Now images will contain only the images where the object is in the frame, right? And out of these, perhaps we will choose maybe the middle one to send it by email. So out of this list of images, perhaps we choose the middle image in the middle of the list, which would correspond with 11.png in this case. So let's prepare that middle image. Let's find its name here. That could be something like glob.glob images / everything.png. So this would be all images, and make sure to import glob at the top here. So that will produce a list of images, and we want to get the image which is in the middle. Right, so what we've got here, let me demonstrate that to you in the Python console. So import glob first, and then all images is equal to that. So all images points to this list. Images 8.png, images 9.png, etc. Now, the length of images, the length of all images, that's a variable that contains this list, all images. The length is 19. And the length divided by 2 is 9.5. And if we convert that into an integer, we get 9. So 9 is the index of the image somewhere in the middle. So what we can do is we can store this index in a variable like that, and then out of all images we only want to get the image with index 9 in our particular case. So that should return images 10.png. So this image somewhere in the middle. I think that's a good representation of the video, of the object in the frame. So I'll get that code that I just showed you and place it here. And so the image with object is equal to all images with that index. So I hope that's clear. And so then we will get this image with object and we will provide that as an argument to send email, right? So that send email will contain some code which will send out the email to our email address containing that image with object. So let's do exactly that in the next video. See you there. In the previous video, we were able to call the send email function when the object exits the frame. We did that in here. So send email is called successfully. So send email is a function we are importing from emailing.py. But this function now has to be populated with actual code which will send an actual email to our email address. Now we will be working with Gmail addresses, so please make sure you have a Gmail account. So you only need one Gmail account. you will use that Gmail account as the sender but also as the receiver of the email. So once you have created a Gmail account, please go to the Manage Your Google Account button. And then you need to go to Security here on the left. And then you want to turn on two-step verification. Once you turn on two-step verification, then you want to come back to this page and then go to App Passwords. There, you may be asked to enter the password of your Gmail account again, and then you want to select here an app, right, go to Other Custom Name, write here something like webcam, whatever you like, webcam 3 in my case. So what we're doing is we're creating an app, and this will give us a password. So the Python app, now that we'll code in PyCharm, we'll use this password to log in to the email account of the sender. So Python needs access from that account to be able to send out emails. So the password should be that. Now, we did send out emails with Gmail previously in the course, but this lecture will be a bit different because the technique is different, since now we have to attach an image to the email. So the code might be a bit different. The library, though, which sends out emails is smtplib. It's the same library we used previously in the course. So this is a standard library which you don't need to install. And now send email. Send email will get a few arguments. So the first argument should be the path of the image. So currently the call here in main.py is without arguments, but I'll say image with object as the first argument. You see this path here, so that's basically the middle image, so to say, somewhere in the middle of the generated images. Now don't worry, because later on we will also create a function which will clean this folder from these images. So at every run of the program, images will be an empty folder, so don't worry about that. So image path is the first argument, which corresponds to that image path. And then let's create an email message variable, which will be equal to an object, a class actually, which should be imported from another library, from email.message import email message. So this email class will create an email object instance. Previously we didn't use this, but now the email is more complex as it contains this attachment, so it should be a proper email message. So we use the email module for that. That's why in the beginning, when I created this emailing.py file, I told you not to name it email.py, because that may clash with the name of this module. Then you say email message. So this object behaves like a dictionary, basically, and you should provide the values of the different keys of this dictionary. The first one is the subject. So the subject should be something like a new customer showed up, for example. This is the subject of the email that you will receive. What else do we have? We have the body of the email. The body of the email can be set with the setContent method. So again, we point to the email message we created in here, to that object, and we add elements to that object. So write something you want to show in the email body, like, hey, we just saw a new customer. So we have a subject, we have the body of the email. Now we need to add the attachment to the email. For that, you need to create a Python file object with the open function. So with open image path, we want to get that path, which is a string pointing to one of these images. So that path, we open that in RB mode. So this is an image, it's a binary file. It's not a text file. So you shouldn't be using R, you should be using RB here. Read in binary mode as file. Then the content of the image itself, the binary content, should be stored in variable using file.read. So that file object, and we apply the read method. Now that we have this content, we exit the with context manager, and here we refer to email message dot add attachment. This is a method that now expects the content, so the binary content which makes up that image. And then you want to specify what kind of file this is. So this is an image, you supply that string. You also need to supply a subtype argument, which finds out the type of the image. Is it a PNG or JPG? And this should be taken from a library which you need to import. So import img HDR. So this gives you metadata about images, and then in subtype you use that module img HDR dot what. So this will find out, this method will find out what kind of image is this content. So this content variable which we get from the read method. And before this, you should also supply a none argument. The none argument could also be file, and then you supply none here. So either way should work, but the way I do it is none here and content here. So once you have added the attachment to the email message object, then finally we need to send out that email. For that, we need to create a Gmail server, smtplib, so an SMTP instance. And this needs the host, smtp.gmail.com, if you're using Gmail, which I do recommend. If not, you should look up on Google to find the host for Outlook, for example. And the port for Gmail is 587, so please use these two. Then you need to do some routines which will start the email server parameters such as hello and start TLS. And finally, you point to Gmail, so to this variable, and to login from the email address app8flask. This is what I'm using, is just a test email account at gmail.com. So this is the sender, right? And here should go the password. Or you can get that. You can cut it and place it in here. And you say email sender, or just sender is equal to that, and password is equal to that. And then you supply here the sender and the password. So these two are variables, are like constants. That's why I use these capital letters. These are constants which will not be changing during the course of the program. So once you log in to your Gmail account using that app password which we created in the beginning of the video, then you say gmail.sendmail. The sender should also be supplied in here, and then the receiver. So let's create a receiver. Here you can write a different email account, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be Gmail, but for convenience I just have the same email address that I use for the sender, which is fine. So the sender, the receiver, and finally you should point to email message, so the email message object dot s underscore string in parentheses. So s string, this is a method in parentheses. So basically this will send out this email as a string, and we should be receiving this. And finally we need to quit the SMTP server object. And yeah, let's call this function. So we do this routine, which I've explained a few times during the course. If name is equal to main with double underscores, then we do send email. So I'm just calling the function here just for testing, but then we'll call it from the main.py file. But this is a good practice to see if it works as a standalone function first, to make sure it works. So as image path, let's give one of these images. For example, 19, right? That would be, in my case, that would be images slash 19.png. So make sure that this path exists in your system, right? In your project directory. So it's here in my case. Right. Then I'll now right click over emailing.py and execute it and see how it goes from here. Please make sure that you turn off your VPN, otherwise usually it will not work with VPN enabled, so please turn it off. Yeah, let's check now if I got the email. So it's 3:51 p.m. now. Yep. So I've got this message. Yep. New customer showed up. And that's the attachment. So it's the same image that I intended to. So it's the same image that I intended to attach. So we received the email successfully. And that's how to send out an email with Python, and the email contains an attachment. So that's the complete code. So I'll leave the video at this point, and in the next video we will see how we can connect this send email function to this main.py script, so that when send email is called, the function send email is triggered and the email is received with an actual image. So I'll see you in the next videos. Thanks. Hey, warm welcome to this new video. In the previous video we constructed this function send email, which sends out an email with an attachment. Now we should be able to call this email, actually the code should be able to call this email somewhere in this line. So if status is 1 and status is 0, we should send out an email. So this is the case when the object has just exited the frame. At that point we should send out an email, and the email will contain as attachment the middle image. So as the program runs and it finds an object in the frames, the program captures several images. So the middle image somewhere in here will be sent out as an email attachment. Let's see how we can do this. First of all though, we should have a function somewhere outside the while loop which cleans out the images folder, right? Without any arguments. And let's create an images folder which should be glob.glob images slash everything dot png, right? So these are png images. So we want to get the list of all images. And then we say for image in images, os.remove image. That is the code which will remove all these images inside that folder. So let's import os. OS is a standard library. And so that's the function definition which cleans that folder. But let's see where we can call that. What do you think? Well, I think that the folder should be cleaned after we have sent out an email, right? So send email. So the email will need an existing path to the middle image, something like this. So that should exist at this point. Therefore, we have to call clean folder after sending out an email. So clean folder here. That one. Yeah, this looks good. So without overthinking this further, let's run the script and see how it goes from here. So right click, run main. Let's see. Let's introduce an object. There we go. And in my computer, the view froze a little bit, which is a problem that we will solve with threading. But let's see how it goes without threading. So, did we receive any email? It's 4:03 now. Yes, we did receive this email. So that's the new object. And images is now empty. Let's try again. So run main. I'll introduce a new type of object now. Right. Again, the video freezes. Even though the email is sent out successfully, as you can see, and we do have this successful image here, so the object is somewhere in the middle, and the images folder is cleaned successfully. So why then does the video freeze? What's the problem with that? Well, I can explain you why. The issue here is that this function requires some time to be executed because the SMTP server should be initialized and it takes a while for the email to be sent out. So that means while the processor is processing this function call, the frames of the video are trying to also display on your computer, on your screen. And they freeze, they slow down because the Python interpreter is trying to finish this function first. So we have two processes at the same time, and threading is what solves this. So in the next video, I'll talk about threading and we'll implement it inside our code here. So see you in the next video. So in the previous video, you saw that when an object enters the frame and it tries to exit the frame, at that point the frame freezes. So now it's not moving even though I took my hands out of the frame. The problem here again is that this program is one process, and this process is trying to send out an email when the object, the pen, exits the frame. And while the process is trying to send out the email, the displaying of frames will freeze. So that's why the video freezes. In that case, we should use threading. So in this video, you'll understand what threading is and how to use it in Python. So one process can have multiple threads, and to create a thread in Python, in a Python program, you use the threading library. It's a standard library, so from that you import the threads class. And then you should create two thread instances. One thread will be for sending out the email in here. So instead of calling the function like this, you create a thread, email thread is equal to thread, the class. The target argument will be equal to send email, and the args arguments will be equal to a tuple. The tuple should contain all the arguments you want to pass to the function call. So this is the function that will be called by the thread, and these will be the arguments. In this case, it's just one, image with object, right? So we should delete that send email call now. And then below this line, you point to the email thread variable, which contains the thread instance. And then you point to the daemon property. So daemon. That will be equal to true. This line should allow the send email function to be executed in the background. So while the frames are being displayed, this will be executed in the background. Then we can do the same for the clean folder function. So let's copy these two. You can select them and then press Ctrl D or Command D to duplicate those lines. And so this will be the clean folder thread, or just clean thread, and this will be clean folder. In this case, we don't have arguments. This is just a function call without arguments. So just leave it like that, and then remove the clean folder call. Also, don't forget to change this variable name as well. Clean thread here, clean thread there. Clean folder, yeah, that looks good. Now what's left to do is calling those threads, starting those threads actually, because up to here you haven't executed the functions yet. You have just prepared the threads, but you are not executing send email or clean folder. To make the threads execute them, we should call those threads now somewhere below here. So inside the if conditional block. So point to email thread and then to the start method. So this will start that thread, and that thread will call the send email function. And let's do the same with clean thread.start. Yeah, and that's it. Let's try to execute the script. Let's introduce an object. And let's see if the video will freeze this time. No. So everything was smooth. Let's quit. I did notice an error somewhere here. Yeah, just here. So send email takes one positional argument, but 13 were given. So let's go to send email in here. So the problem here is that this shouldn't be supplied just like that. You should also place a comma there to indicate that this is actually a tuple and not just a single object, just a string, because otherwise, so this is the equivalent of this. But when you add this comma, you make that a tuple, right? So let's try again. Let's introduce an object. Go out. No freeze. Let's see if we got errors this time. So no such file or directory, images 33.png. So it seems to me that before the email is sent out, the image has been already deleted. So it seems to me that before the email is sent out, the image has already been deleted by the clean thread. So to be able to understand what's going on, when you're working with threads, it's good that in the functions which the threads are executing, you have this print clean folder function started. And also at the end, you have another print function, clean folder function ended. And we do the same with the email function. So print send email function started, and at the end, print send email function ended. Now let's run again the program. Right, we have zeros. Let's introduce an object. Here we go. Quit. And let's see if we got an error this time, or what did we get exactly. So these are the outputs. The send email function started at this point, and then after that the clean folder function started. So both these started at the same time. Then the clean folder function ended. So that means at this point between this and that, the images have been deleted. So all the images of the images folder have been gone at this point. And that means the email will not be able to be sent out because there are no more images. I even didn't get this printed out because the function wasn't executed since I quit the program before the execution ended. So if I try again, and then this time what I'll do is that I'll introduce the object and then go out and then wait a while. So you shouldn't stop the program immediately. You should wait for the email to be executed. So now quit, and I saw that we already got this send email function ended. So this time it was successful, I suppose. So probably we did get an email this time, yeah. So it's successful, but sometimes you can't just get that email. So it's better that in main.py we put the thread of the clean threads, so the clean threads, it's better to start it at another point. When the loop ends, I'm talking about the while loop. So you see I placed it at the very top level in here, right? So that means we only want to delete the images once the user has quit the program with the Q key. So let's see how this goes. So there we go, and here is an object. Let's wait a while. You don't want to stop the program immediately, right? So if we see now in images, there should be lots of PNG images. So these are the images that capture the time when the object was moving. And now if I go to the video and press Q, that should end the program, and images now is an empty folder and the email should be in here. So that's the touched image. And that's the final code. So I hope that this gives you some knowledge about threading, and you'll encounter it perhaps not often, but it's good to know how threading works. So thanks a lot for following these videos, and I'll talk to you later. Welcome to today's programming concept. Today we're going to talk about how image processing is used across different applications. Let's start with how YouTube uses image processing. Let's say someone has created a video, a YouTuber, and they uploaded it on YouTube. Then another person tries to get the same video and uploads that video on their own channel. When the other person uploads that video, YouTube checks for copyright. So it tries to check both videos to compare the frames of these videos and see if the second video was the same as the first one. So that's one example of how image processing is used. Another example is Facebook. When you have a picture uploaded, then Facebook will generate a description for that picture to help people with vision impairment. So basically it finds out what's happening in this picture using image processing. So it might compare that picture with other pictures in their databases. And so it generates some text. So this text then can be used by people with visual impairment. Right, so that was the second example. Another example is in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. So this is a satellite image here. For example, this here should be some forests, some city, urban area. So in GIS, image processing can be used to classify satellite images. So this is known as image classification. So basically, image processing will try to detect that this is forest, so it assigns the same green colors to that forest, and then it detects urban area, this one in red here. So that can also be done with Python. Another example, some phones have this face recognition features when you can unlock your phone and the phone looks at your face and it recognizes your face. So to be able to recognize your face, your phone camera has taken a picture of you previously, so then it compares these two images to find out if they are the same. So that was face recognition. Then we also have self-driving cars, which also use image processing, and also more complex AI, artificial intelligence algorithms. So these were some examples to give you an idea how image processing is used across different companies and across different applications. Yeah, with that, thanks a lot and I'll talk to you later.